Welcome to the channel. Today's story is about the importance of one person's belief in themselves. It's an ancient tale that shows us all that it takes is one person to change the world. Let's begin. Once upon a time, two villages sat like enemies on opposite sides of a wide, deep river. These villages were close enough to see each other, but far enough to hate each other. For generations, they had argued over fishing grounds and property lines. The arguments grew into fistfights, and the fistfights almost always ended in bloodshed. A deep line of mistrust had been drawn between them, a line as wide as the river itself. Now, the river wasn't exactly broad. It could be crossed in a few places by simply stepping from rock to rock, but there were no bridges. And so the distance between the villages seemed much greater than it actually was. The villages didn't just avoid each other, they actively despised each other. If someone from the other side dared cross the river, he'd likely come back with a new scar, or worse, without any breath at all. In the village of Greenshore, where willow trees lined the riverbank, lived a man named Elias. He was a simple carpenter whose days were spent making chairs, tables, and whatever else people needed. Unlike the men who spent their days sharpening their swords, Elias did not believe that fighting was ever the answer. While others sharpened their weapons for war, he sharpened his tools for creation. When he looked across the river, he didn't see enemies. He saw people. All he could think about was how nice it would be if they could meet without risking their lives. And so, Elias began to make a plan, a crazy, impossible plan. As soon as the sun rose, he went to work. Every morning, he cut down trees, shaped heavy beams, and carried stones to the river. Each day, he got closer to finishing his work, but he was just one man, and the river was wide. There were times when he almost gave up, when his hands bled and his shoulders screamed in pain. At those times, he wanted to go home, curl up by the fire, and forget about the stupid bridge that no one would ever use. But then he'd look up at the sky and say to himself, I may be just one man, but I'm not just any man. I'm Elias, son of Thomas, and I will finish this bridge. And so he did. One day, he placed the final stone, and the next day, he added the last railing. Finally, he stepped back to admire his work. It was not a grand structure made of marble or gold, but it was strong and it was true. Looking around, he noticed that many people had gathered to watch him. Villagers from Greenshore stood on one side of the river, and people from the other side stood on the other side. No one had crossed the river to watch him work, but now that the bridge was complete, fear kept them from taking that step. From among the crowd, a young boy called out, "Hey, Elias, why did you build this?" Why would you waste all your time and effort on something like this? Everyone nodded in agreement. To them, the bridge made no sense. "We have always hated each other," said a woman from Greenshore. "Why do you want to bring us together?" Elias turned to them, smiled, and asked, "Who says we can't be friends? Who says we can't help each other?" He looked at the bridge and said, "Look what one man can do. Now, imagine what two people can accomplish. 3 people, a whole village. Look at the land we can reclaim from the river. Look at all the crops we can grow. Together, we can build more houses, plant more fields, and make better weapons." The villagers thought about this, and slowly they began to nod their heads. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was time to stop wasting their energy on fighting and start wasting it on creating. But then someone shouted, "He's lying. The other side has the best hunting grounds. Once they take those, they won't leave us with anything." "That is true," said Elias. "But why don't we work together to find even better hunting grounds? The forest on the other side is big, but there are better forests deeper inside the mountains. If we work together, we can defend each other from wild animals and bring back more food for our villages." This time, 2 people nodded their heads. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was time to try something new. And so, cautiously, 1 man from Greenshore and 1 man from the other side stepped onto the bridge. They didn't know each other, but they knew what they had in common. They both believed in Elias and the possibilities that lay ahead. One by one, more people stepped onto the bridge, until there was a line stretching from end to end. Then, for the first time in decades, people from both sides met face to face. It was an awkward meeting. They didn't know what to say or do, but they didn't need to talk. Just being together was a step in the right direction. After a while, some children came forward. They weren't afraid, and they had questions. "What's your name? How old are you? Do you have a dog?" They played together, and soon the adults joined in. Before long, the entire area echoed with laughter and conversation. They talked about farming techniques, hunting stories, and ways to improve their lives. They realized that they had much more in common than they had differences. As the sun set, they agreed to meet again the following day. That night, the people of Greenshore gathered in the market square. Their faces were bright with excitement and hope. The children skipped around. The adults talked in hushed voices. They couldn't believe that things could finally be changing. The next day and every day after, the people met in the middle until one day the people of Greenshore arrived to find no one waiting for them. They waited for hours, but no one came. Disappointed, they returned home and sent word to the other village. The next day, the people from the other side arrived. But they, too, had to return home empty-handed. For 3 days, the bridge stood empty. Then, on the 4th day, the people met once again in the middle. They were angry and confused. "Why did you make us wait?" "We did not make you wait. We've been here the entire time." Then they looked across the river and saw the people of Greenshore standing on the other side. The people from the other side had not been able to cross because the bridge was blocked by cargo. The villagers from Greenshore had used the night to bring supplies to the middle of the river, hoping to trade with the other side. Unfortunately, they had forgotten to leave an opening. When they heard the reason for the misunderstanding, everyone laughed. It was the first time they had laughed together, really laughed. After that day, they made sure to always leave an opening in the wall. Soon, every day was filled with trading, laughing, and celebrating. The bridge became a place where friendships were made, deals were struck, and families were reunited. The villagers learned that the other side was NT so bad, and that life was much better when they worked together. Years passed, and the bridge became stronger and more beautiful. Plants grew along the sides. Wild animals returned to the area, and birds sang in the trees. People on both sides of the river prospered, all because one man had dared to believe in them. Now, Elias never became rich or famous. He continued to live in his small cottage and work in his carpentry shop. But every time someone crossed the bridge, they remembered the man who showed them that even the widest rivers can be crossed, and that even the deepest hatred can be overcome. Many years later, the bridge was still standing. Children played along its path, lovers held each other close, and the elderly walked slowly, leaning on their canes. Whenever anyone looked up at the strong and beautiful bridge, they told their children. This was built by one man who believed in unity. Sometimes the greatest warriors are not those who wield swords, but those who build bridges. And that's the end of the Builder of Bridges story. If you liked this tale, please leave a thumbs up. Thank you for watching.